America.
Welcome back. It's going on to 9:45 a.m. news and views on Salam Media. We're going to cross over to Harare in Zimbabwe, and we're going to be talking to Peter Gift Mutasa. He is the chairperson of the Crisis in Zimbabwe Coalition and political commentator. He's going to be talking to us about this worsening food crisis in Zimbabwe. Peter Mutasa, very good morning to you. Welcome to the program. And of course, a very worrying situation indeed. We understand that this seems to be heading for a nationwide state of disaster. And this is all due to global warming, I should imagine. We also hear that there was a storm that destroyed more than half of the country's harvest, leaving about 7.6 million people at risk of acute hunger. Is the situation as dire as I've just sketched now, or is it the same, or is it even going to be worse as we move along?
Right, so thank you very much, and thank you for giving that background. Indeed, the situation is expected to worsen because normally our peak period is between January and March which will be next year, January to March next year. There are different figures that have been thrown around. The Zimbabwe livelihood assessment has put it at 6 million who have been rendered vulnerable in the rural area and 1.7 million in urban areas to give a total of 7.7. But people are still revising, and some are indicating that almost 60% of the population, which is a figure around 9 million, will be vulnerable during the peak period between January and March. And to add to the challenges is the water insecurities. Again, because of the El Nino drought, many areas are also facing challenges to do with access to water. Even those who have sunk boreholes, even some who traditionally do not face vulnerabilities are also facing vulnerabilities. So we are expecting much worse during the peak period.
So the situation does sound very dire. We're talking about food insecurity. We're talking also about water insecurity, and undoubtedly we're now going to see mass displacement of people because they are going to try and move from the current places where they are living to perhaps places where they can find food and water, and that creates a problem on its own. To the neighboring countries, there's going to be issues around illegal immigration as well. That being said, let me also just ask you, what is the status? We understand that officials from the United Nations and the World Food Programme recently visited Zimbabwe to determine the drought's impact on the nation and to call for more international support for the humanitarian response. Your picture has just disappeared, Peter. I hope you can hear me and respond to my question. Okay, it seems as if we've just lost the connection there with Peter Mutasa. He is, of course, chairperson of Crisis in Zimbabwe Coalition and is also a political commentator. We're talking about Zimbabwe facing its worsening food crisis due to the El Nino droughts. Peter, did you get my two questions earlier on? The issue regarding mass displacement of people and creating illegal immigration to neighboring countries, and then the findings of the World Food Programme and the United Nations.
Yeah, so the World Food Programme has already called for a call for humanitarian assistance in the tune of 429 million United States of American dollars. The government of Zimbabwe has also called for humanitarian assistance, although people are disagreeing with the fact that there were asking for a 2 billion humanitarian assistance, which many estimates expect to be beyond what is needed. But maybe the government has got some other information that we don't have in terms of strategic grain and in terms of its own capacity. But that is really needed. It is really needed. As to displacements, many households are taking different survival measures and strategies or coping mechanisms. Some are selling out assets so that they stock on grain. Some are venturing into child labor, those who are surrounding farming areas. Definitely some will try to move across borders. It's not yet known to what extent the displacements will be. Some will just move around within the borders, and some are taking different coping mechanisms. As to migration, I'm not very sure to how much this will lead to many people going out, and it will be very difficult to measure because already we have got other socioeconomic and political challenges that are making people moving out. Many Zimbabweans are looking for an opportunity to go out, and it may be complemented by the food situation or the drought situation.
So, Peter, my final question to you. You mentioned a horrific figure there, $2 billion worth of assistance. And I should imagine people like yourself, chairperson of Crisis in Zimbabwe Coalition, and also a political commentator. I think the big question you're asking is, how is that going to lock Zimbabwe into perhaps repaying these loans? At what price does this loan come? So this may tide you over for the next few years, but there's also going to be the issue of repayment. And what is that going to look like as far as the foreign lenders are concerned? Does it mean you give away your mineral rights, or goodness knows what else is Zimbabwe having to give up regarding taking this loan?
So the first thing is that we don't believe that the 2 billion figure is accurate. The Zimbabwean government is fond of throwing such figures around, but we don't think that is accurate. The various United Nations agencies and also various NGOs have assessed the situation, and they think that the United Nations call for 429 million can be sufficient. But that also depends on whether we are going to have a recurrent drought this season, because majority of our rural population depend on natural rain. So if we are going to have a recurrent drought, then definitely we are going to have a bigger problem. The government of Zimbabwe is not seeking for loans, and we don't think that we need a loan for this. We need humanitarian assistance. We need World Food Programs. We need UN agencies to mobilize, and any other NGOs to mobilize for humanitarian assistance. We are already facing serious debt crisis, so we don't think we should add on 2 billion to the current debt crisis that we have. But we also need to look at the many leakages that we are losing in national resources through corruption, through smuggling of our minerals. So if the government is going to be prudent, we can even finance this part of this through our own resources. And that is not to say that we do not need humanitarian assistance. We definitely need humanitarian assistance because the government has not been responsible in terms of managing our own resources. So I don't think we need a debt to add on the debt crisis. We need humanitarian assistance, and it's needed urgently. We also need to ensure that food is not dispersed through political affiliation by the government, which is why we need a broad array of NGOs to be involved with food distribution for accountability and transparency, and to make sure that those people who are most in need are benefiting and there's no corruption. The government has put in place two measures: one, a cash transfer for the urban centers, and also a food mitigation strategy for rural population where they're distributing food aid. But our challenge is political partisanship that is always related to our food aid programs. And this is why we are calling for a lot of NGOs to come in and offer humanitarian assistance.
Well, good luck on that. We do know that, sadly, very, very sadly, Zimbabwe used to be the breadbasket of Africa. And just look where you are sitting now, having to go with a begging bowl in hand to agencies, aid agencies around the world. And as you've also rightly put it, that we shouldn't be thinking about a $2 billion loan, because that comes with a whole host of conditions, and you believe that it is not needed. You rather need the humanitarian aid. Has Zimbabwe reached out, and are there organizations that are willing to come on board with the aid? And of course, the one very key element that you point out there is it needs to be managed correctly. Otherwise, this too falls foul to corruption.
Yeah, so we already have many different players already working on it. World Food Program has got its own programs. USAID, they are also on the ground. There are many different players that are already giving, but looking at the figures that and of all sorts that they are covering, we still have a huge deficit. Some are covering 40,000, some are covering 86,000. So we still have a huge deficit. The government has also announced that it is going on a massive 3-month or until year-end program of food aid. But if you look at the quantum, they are basing on 7.5 kilograms of milli meal per person, and that is awfully insufficient for cereals only. And then if you take into account other nutritional needs, then that is awfully insufficient. So we still think that there is need for more players to come in and to ensure that the UN call is fully supported by all donors around the world, so that we address this crisis that we are facing. But we also need to have internal dialogues in terms of how we are going to ensure that we reprioritize our expenditures as a nation and see where we are expending much more, but there's no particular need in those areas. So we need to cut on our expenditures that are wasteful. We need to address the issue of corruption, as I have pointed out. We need to address the issue of leakages in terms of natural resources. We are losing a lot of money. The Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe puts it at 1.8 billion through illicit financial outflows, mainly smuggling of our minerals. Okay. And this is going unabated.
All right. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you indeed. Good luck. We do hope that the rains come sooner rather than later, and that you will get all of the assistance needed. That was Peter Mutasa from Harare. Thank you indeed for your time. It is exactly 9:58 a.m. We're now going to take a listen to our Fired Up series by Hafiz Imran Chunara. And of course, the topic today is ships do not sink due to the water that is around them. So let's take a listen to this, and a reminder once again that this hour of News and Views is sponsored by Africa Muslims Agency. Africa Muslims Agency, a beacon of hope to communities for over 35 years in Africa and beyond.